Hello everyone, welcome to a second thoughts overview of Khazrak the One-Eye. As in previous videos, I went through the initial turns and observed the victory conditions, starting location, diplomacy, mechanics, buildings, units, etc. and took my own conclusions. In the later parts of the video, I will show you what army compositions I would do and why. As mentioned in other videos, this is how I typically approach my campaigns, what I check before I start playing, basically. It is not an in-depth guide, but rather an initial approach to the faction. Now let's play with Khazrak the One-Eye. For our short victory condition, it is probably one of the shortest and quickest ones. We need to destroy Midland, located really close to you, and then to occupy, loot, raze or sack 35 different settlements. Should we achieve this, the reward is not bad at all. Winds of Magic Power Reserve plus 30 per turn for all armies, considering how magic is rather useful to the Beastmen, or anyone, by the way. It will ensure nice reserves before any battle. Now, the long victory campaign, it's a different story. You need to achieve the short victory, so destroy Midland and 35 settlements, and then to occupy, loot, raze, or sack 80 different settlements. We also need to destroy almost the entirety of Empire. I'm just going to go through all of these, but it's basically all of the Empire lands. We need to destroy them, including as well Couronne, which is the Bretonnians right here. And then, to top it all off, we need to raise or conquer the Oak of Ages, basically going into Altha-Loren and facing the Wood Elves in the process, which is quite a difficult feat. Now, should we complete this, we'll receive plus 10 to any new lord, which will indeed help if you choose to continue into domination or whole map conquest, basically. Now, Khazrak is the conqueror of the Blood Grounds, and he reduces the dread cost for all unit capacity by 15%, more on that later. He also gives a nice evasion chance and ambush success chance by 15% to all armies, which is rather a nice buff considering how the faction actually plays out. As for climate, well, there is no climate. It is all green, baby. You can go anywhere you want with the Beastmen. It's one of the best ideas for them. Their replay value is so good with this. So they'll thrive anywhere for certain. Although they are not going to actually build everything. More on that later. Your first province is none. Beastmen are essentially a horde faction, with the Hearthstone mechanic adding a lot of depth to it. Therefore, the typical early idea is to take over Lorelorn Forest to make it your first Hearthstone and Bloodgrounds. It is a good idea, especially because you start at war with them, and because you may never have a better shot at these Wood Elves. Everyone hates us, basically, so expansion will happen usually into Midland and other Empire factions, but the beauty of the Beastmen is it can go anywhere you wish. Considering the first Hearthstone, however, and the Blood Grounds around it, it is always a good idea to clear out everything around the initial Lorelorn Forest Hearthstone, and then make your own conclusions of where to expand next. Of course, you may wish to follow the objectives, or do it as a sandbox. That's the real beauty of the Beastmen. Diplomacy is very easy. Either you're at war or not at war. Peace for the weak. Empire, Bretonnia, the Vampire Counts, Altha-Loren or the Wood Elves, the High Elves, everyone is your target, and they'll make good ruins once you defeat them. Now seriously, it is entirely possible for you to gain allies, such as done here with the Warriors of Chaos, or even their Norscan allies or vassals. They will most likely be your friends because you're fighting their enemies, especially earlier on. In that sense, good outposts will be for Chaos and Norsca, for which you may wish to take some nice heavy cavalry or heavy infantry, some good missile troops. That'll be great, and it is up to you all the combinations. These are two just of the ones that I'll probably try to obtain for some variety. For mechanics, there are 5 main ones. Hearthstones, which allow you to raise a location, put a Hearthstone in it. The neighboring settlements will become Blood Grounds, symbolized by this little symbol here. You can raise these in order to obtain marks of ruination. Now, Marks of Ruination unlock different units and also army capacity, as well as some more Hearthstone shards, so that you can build more Hearthstones overall and increase your grounds. Dread is an additional mechanic, a currency basically. It allows you to get unit capacity for all your units, some legendary lords if you wish to hire them, and increasing the capacity of specific heroes, upgrades to your Hearthstones and Horde in general, and some items. Take your time learning all of these, as they are all very important, and you should get a lot of variety in your playthroughs just by changing which ones you prioritize. In addition, we also have the Dark Moon, or actually the moon in itself. Basically, from time to time, you'll get a mechanic, an event, where you'll have to choose the moon that you'll be given. In this will grant faction-wide bonuses to your faction. Finally, the last one is called the Bestial Rage. In essence, all your armies and hordes have it, and the more Bestial Rage you accumulate, the more your casualty replenishment rate is, the more your horde growth is, and your charge bonus is. So keep fighting, basically, as you want to maintain this as high as possible. One special note: units do not incur any upkeep. So once you've unlocked the capacity for them, that's it. No further money needed to spend on them. The Beastmen have no province edicts. However, their Hearthstone buildings convey a variety of similar buffs to the nearby Bloodgrounds, such as casualty and replenishment rate and horde recruitment capacity, as well as corruption, winds of magic, some line of sight over all regions, and dread gained faction-wide. Notice that one. We also enjoy some debuffs to the enemies. Campaign movement range, minus 30%, some small chance of a plague, and some reduced vigor in battle for everyone that is not Warriors of Chaos, Beastmen, and Norska. Notice how that diplomacy comes in place here as well. Kinda incentives you to be friends with them, at least for a while. And finally, we have more ammunition for Beastmen, Warriors of Chaos, and Norscan units. More reload time actually, so a debuff to the enemy towers, and less missile damage for enemy towers as well. Basically use whichever is preferable and adapt to the circumstances. In terms of army stances, the default is actually the Beastman ambush. You have a chance of ambushing any enemy army when you attack. Great! It adds to the playstyle so much. One of the best things they actually have. You also have Raid, which costs 0 movement points. It allows immunity to attrition and some extra bestial rage, of course some income, and immunity to most attrition. Beast Paths are sort of your underway style stance. It allows great tactical advantages, but be wary of enemy interception. Finally, Hidden Camp. It only costs 10% movement range. It allows you to be immune to most attrition, some ambush success chance, as you have a chance to ambush if an enemy passes through close. You are hidden as well, so this is one that is mostly used for you to build and recruit. However, always consider staging an ambush with this stance. Your armies are your settlements, as you are a horde faction. In addition to the 5 military buildings, you have 4 support ones, each with a different army ability and with different buffs for your armies or for your campaign. Basically, you can get Winds of Magic, Power Reserve, and the Siege ability. You can also get some Dread gain per turn, and also a debuff to enemies, another buff for a unit that kills it in the end. Be careful, and with magic item and drop chance and income from post-battle loot increase. You also can get a basic corruption building with some debuffs for enemy ranged units. Now the further you grow, the more building slots will be allowed. Note that you can build every single building on each of your hordes, but it will take quite a long time to do that. At tier 3, you're quite a menace, with Bestiger herds, some spawn, Minotaurs, giants, and even with just some basic chariots and centaurs with throwing axes. So you'll be a nightmare to enemies, especially with the ambush. Now in tier 5 you get Jaber Slythe for infantry, and you get Gorgons for anti-large, as well as Sigers, your artillery unit basically. So you'll be a menace by the time you reach tier 5, and it will change the battles for certain. In terms of research, it works slightly different as challenges of the Dark Gods. You need to complete specific missions, win 5 ambush battles to unlock the right to research the Unnatural Order, and all the other ones as well. So you'll need to learn which ones you need to unlock, or would like to unlock, so that you can benefit from whatever buffs you want, or receive the campaign benefits that you wish. As always, skills are divided into specific for the legendary or the lord ones, combat or magic ones, the yellow line, army or red line buffs, and campaign or blue buffs. Starting with the blue line, take special attention to Fitted Gallipod, which allows basically minus casualties from all attrition and replenishment rate. Great for use on any campaign. The other ones are useful campaign buffs, but may prove time-consuming, and in essence you're typically going to ambush enemy armies, for instance, so you may wish to bypass Lightning Strike for the Beastmen altogether. Red line is rather expensive, considering the units that they actually buff, and the lack of buffs, for instance, for Manticores, without any reason given. The overall army lacks good anti-large until later tier 4 and 5 options, although those are great options, with the Minotaurs with great weapons here, and the Gorgon units. You're also at sort of disadvantage basically when sieging, since you lack powerful flying units or artillery to overcome the defenses until much later. Still, it is less needy in terms of proper combination. This can usually work well with tier 3 units or 1 to 3 units in almost any circumstance. Now, your lords have specific units that they buff, such as Doom Bulls buffing Minotaurs, or Bray Shaman who buff all sorts of creatures as you wish. For the Beastmen redline skills, here we have it, all the redline skills and the units that are affected by them. Most of the time you'll be using mainly the elite units here with the hoofed heavyweights and freakish mutations, but there's a lot to try out with the Beastmen. Let's see what I can find. Khazrak has Bestigors, Razorgore chariots, and Ungor unit buffs, and of course some Harpies, some Chaos Warhound ones, so you might as well use them for some ideas for the army. Yes, their inclusion, for instance, from the Harpies is mostly versus enemy flyers, or during sieges perhaps to clear the walls before the Bestigors come in. Notice how expensive it is for the red line points buff, so it will be difficult for you to ensure that you buff all units in your army. A typical army should also include lots of Minotaurs and single entities, so here are a few different alternatives. Notice how you may wish to have lower tier level armies as well, given how the unit unlocks are working with the dread mechanics, so you can also use those for lower quality armies that should do some cleanup basically for your main armies. Remember how Bray Shaman, for instance, buff all sorts of different creatures, so they can be considered to add some variety in your gameplay. That is one aspect that I love about the Beastmen. They actually do encourage some variety in your armies. An overview for the Beastmen: basically they're extremely good at ambushing, so if you like surprising your enemy and rushing it, you will love the Beastmen playstyle. You should focus on the vanguard possibilities for Mr. Khazrak, the one eye here as well. Take them on the field instead of sieges, and enjoy the army abilities as well as great replenishment. As for army, you have reliable infantry, average missiles. What they do have is somewhat decent. They just lack variety. Great monsters and single entities, lacking heavy cavalry and anti-large infantry, which you may wish to obtain from outposts. Replenishment is great, and since you have no upkeep, all you need to do is keep fighting to get better units for your armies. Due to all this, I believe it's time for you to play with Khazrak the One-Eye.